Hello everyone, this is Mr. Harper, and we're going to continue, well actually going to finish our discussion on the roots today. And we've talked about the last time about functions of the roots, and we also talked about how the roots uptake or pull in nutrients. Today I want to talk about how to get water into the roots and how they get water from in the roots up to the leaves. So let's begin. The first thing I want to talk about a little bit is osmosis. So the epidermis of a root has these proteins that are called active transport proteins, and their job is to pull things into the root. So the plant uses those proteins and uses energy to pull nutrients in. They're physically using energy to get those nutrients in. And so what happens is, once they get all those nutrients in, water is left outside of the root. And through a process I'm really not going to explain, I don't think we really need to know about it so much. Because the water is now outside of the root without all those nutrients, it decides, oh, I should be in the root too. And it goes into the root all on its own. The plant does not need to use energy to get the water in. It goes in on its own. The only thing they need to use energy for is get the nutrients in. Once the nutrients in it are in, they attract the water, and the water goes in. And that's a process that's called osmosis, the movement of water through a membrane, and that membrane is the epidermis of the root. Water moves from a high concentration to a low concentration, where there's less water. Now, what happens is, once that water gets into the root. Here's some root hairs. This is the epidermis that covers the root hairs. Gets in through this epidermal layer, this top brown layer. It then goes into this area called the cortex, this green area. Okay, that's the second area. Now, once it gets through the cortex, there's another layer of cells called the endodermis. And in the endodermis, there's a filter called the Caspian strip. You can see here in the brown, that's the endodermis on each side. And then the Caspian strip is this gray stuff. And that Caspian strip is waterproof. The only way the water can get through is to go through the cells of the endodermis. So that strip is a filter. It lets the water in, but once the water gets in, guess what? It can't get back out. The center area is called the vascular cylinder. It's made of two things, the phloem and the xylem. You can think of the phloem like a bunch of straws in the plant that food flows through. And you can think of the xylem as a bunch of straws in the plant that water flows through. And this endodermis has this Caspian strip in it once again that lets the water through but won't let it back out. Caspian strip is waxy, and that's how it acts like a filter, because wax, doesn't let water through as well. But it lets the water in, doesn't let it get back out. And also, it lets nutrients in, but doesn't let those back out either. Once they get into this center area of the root, which is called the vascular cylinder, the vascular cylinder is completely surrounded by the endodermis and the Caspian strip. So the plant needs to use energy to get nutrients into the root. It also needs to use energy to get nutrients from that cortex, the outer part of the root, into that vascular cylinder that's in the very middle. And it uses energy to pump those nutrients in. And once those nutrients get in, the water says, oh, where'd the nutrients go? And wants to follow them. So the water goes through into the vascular cylinder at this point. So now we've got these straw-like things, the xylem and the phloem in the middle, that are called the vascular cylinder together, surrounded by this endodermis tissue or with Caspian strip in it, that lets in nutrients and lets in water but doesn't let them back out. Now, I asked you a question on the anticipation kit, and I said in that question, do the roots need to pump water up to the leaves? And the answer was no, they don't. Because here's why. water goes into this vascular cylinder in the center, but then it can't get back out. As more and more and more water comes in, the pressure of that goes up, and it just causes the water to rise. And it goes up and up and up and up and up, and it rises because of pressure, not because of any kind of pumping action on the roots. So here we've got this epidermis here, then the cortex. Minerals come in by pumping, and water follows it. Then we have this ring of cells called the endodermis with the Caspian strip that surround this orangish and lighter browner colored phloem, which are tubes for the food, remember, and the xylem, which are tubes for the water. Once water and nutrients go through the Caspian strip, they can only go one way. They can only go in. The food is pumped in, the nutrients rather, is pumped in. The water follows it because it wants to be with the nutrients. Now they're stuck in this center. And the xylem, this centerpiece, is what transports the water. As more and more and more water coming here into the center, the water climbs due to pressure, and up it goes. So that is how water is moved throughout the plant. And this finishes our discussion on the roots. Talk to you next time.